Welcome to the Page by Page Book Club. I'm your host, Paige Imprint, and I bring you weekly book club meetings wherever you get your podcasts. I could not be more honored or excited to have the opportunity to be speaking with the one, the only Sarah A. Bailey this week. I truly am just so unbelievably grateful that she joined us for book club. If you have listened to any of my podcasts, you have heard her name brought up. I am such a true big fan of Sarah A. Bailey. She's unbelievably talented. I have been cited many a time saying that she writes the human experience in words on paper, and I truly couldn't find a way to describe her writing better. She creates such raw, real, emotional experiences through her stories. And if you have not read anything by her, you are truly missing out. She and I chatted today because she just re-released the first two books in her Pacific Shores series traditionally with Paige and Vine. I'm so incredibly proud of her. It's an honor to know her. It's an honor to work with her. And it is an honor to get to chat with her on the podcast today. So without further ado, Sarah A. Bailey, welcome to Book Club.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm jaw on the floor. I literally just told you 10 seconds ago I wasn't going to rave about you, but I am so excited. I know the usual book club attendees will know just how significant of a guest this is. Even my husband was like, even I know Sarah A. Bailey. That's a household name. That's a household name. So I'm so happy to have you. And we're doing a little pre Pacific Shores re release chit chat today, which is so exciting. But before we get into all things Pacific Shores, I started my very first episode essentially doing a villain origin story, being a reader, and then for you, an author. So how did you become a reader and then ultimately become a writer?
Yeah, so I feel like, obviously, like as children, like I did love books as a kid. I remember like The Bridge to Terabithia was one of my favorite books when I was younger. I obviously read like Harry Potter and all of those things, but I think when I really, because like as you start to get into like, I don't know, middle school, it's like I think you still have to read for school, but it becomes, I don't know, that's when it started to feel like reading really had to be a hobby. It had to be something I had to seek out for enjoyment. It wasn't like my parents were sitting down and reading books with me every night anymore. You know what I mean? And so for me, my dad actually got remarried when I was in seventh grade, and my stepmom, at the time was a middle school teacher, but she lived in Canada, so she moved to the US, moved in with us, and obviously she couldn't teach anymore. She didn't have the same credentials in the US. But whenever she moved, she had brought like a bunch of just like school supplies and books and all kinds of stuff so that my brother and I, like our house was just always stacked. Like she just had all this stuff that she had bought herself for her classroom, and then when she left Canada, she just took it with her. And she ended up giving me the House of Night series by PC and Kristen Cast because I had read Twilight and I loved Twilight. So I guess maybe Twilight was like but everybody was reading Twilight and like the movies were out. Like I watched the first movie before I read the books. So I don't really consider that being the thing to have like made me a reader. It was such a phenomenon that like who wasn't, you know? But it was like after I read Twilight, she gifted me the House of Night series, which I guess for people who don't know, it is like a vampire academy, like boarding school. And in this universe, people, when they're like 16, if you're a vampire, you like wake up one day with a crescent moon tattooed on your forehead. And everyone's like, go to school. And you have to go to this like vampire academy. And the authors, I think the books take place in Oklahoma. I think they live in Oklahoma, but they interweave like Native American lore, Cherokee, I think if I'm not mistaken, and then like vampire lore, and it's all interwoven. Oh my God, they're so good. There's so many books in that series, but they're phenomenal. So I feel like those made me obsessed with reading. I read that whole series, and then I read The Hunger Games. And then when I was in later high school, I got into like John Green and like Perks of Being a Wallflower and all of those kind of like coming of age, like To All the Boys I Loved Before, all of those series. I started reading in high school. And then in college, I lost reading. Like, I feel like a lot of people say that. Like, it's so hard to keep it as a hobby when you're in college. College is so time consuming and you're reading so much for school that you're just like burnt out on it. Um, and then so I didn't really read when I was in college, but I graduated in 2020. So right in the middle of COVID, I graduated college and I literally graduated, lost my job, and was like quarantined that whole summer. So I started reading again then. Um, and that was like my introduction into like adult romance. Like Beach Read by Emily Henry was one of the first ones I read, and then I started reading a lot of like Christina Lauren. Love in Other Words is still one of my favorite books ever, so that's kind of what introduced me to adult romance. I always have enjoyed writing. Like even now when I look back at like high school, I remember being in like 10th grade and we had to write a World War II based short story. And you could choose any aspect of World War II. So like Pearl Harbor or the Holocaust or whatever. And you had to write like a 10-page short story. And I was the only person that made there's a romance. And I like look back now and I'm like, I should have known. Like, um, and but I just didn't think like being an author, it didn't feel like a real thing. Like I obviously knew that I went to the bookstore and there were books on shelves, but like it was like when someone says they want to be like an astronaut or something, you're like, oh, that's not really like that's not real, And that's how I always felt about being an author. I didn't think like for me, I had to have a very clear path of like I go to school and I do this and then I apply for this job on Indeed and then I get that job and so being an author, there's so many different ways to do it, and it just was overwhelming to me. So I kind of was like, that's not an option. And I actually went to college for marketing. And then after I got laid off because of like COVID and stuff, I actually moved. I grew up in Oregon, and then we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina for literally no reason. Like my husband and I picked a spot on a map and we're like, sure, why not? And we just moved across the country. And like looking back now, I'm glad I did it. But at the time, I was like, why did I do that? It was so isolating and we had no reason. And I had gotten a job in Charlotte, but then we got there and it was like, they were like, oh, this is going to be 100% remote now. So I like didn't have any friends. I didn't know anyone. My husband didn't know anyone. We were just there. And I kind of had a bit of like a breakdown. And I started going to therapy, and my therapist was like, I think you really need like a creative outlet. She told me to start journaling, and I've never been a journal girl. I don't like to journal. Don't ask me to like write about myself and my life. No. And so she was like, well, maybe, she told me to look up writing prompts and just, I needed something to like flex those muscles. Um, and so I was like scrolling on Pinterest and I found a prompt that said something like create an original character who moved away from home and like has to return home for like a negative experience or something like that. And it just felt very like I was someone who had moved away kind of on a whim and I was really struggling with like adjusting to that. And so it felt like a good prompt. And that's kind of how my debut novel was like born.
How incredible. The second you said that, I was like jaw on floor.
Yeah, I started Penelope, and it wasn't even supposed to be a romance at first. Like I had just started to dabble in reading romance. And so all I knew was that I was writing about this girl. So there was like no Carter. This man did not exist. There was only Penelope. She was all that mattered to me. And then Macy popped up and it was just about the two of them. And in my very, very, very earliest drafts of not even that book, but just of those two people existing, they both lived in England together.
Okay, so that's where the college element came
Yeah.
from.
Yes.
Okay.
And Macy was a lesbian. my
Yes.
very, my very first Macy. So like I don't know. And then somehow I don't really know. It morphed so many times. Like at one point I actually wrote like a 60,000 word fully completed draft. It was not called The Soulmate Theory. It didn't have a title, but it was about Penelope and Carter and it was almost the Heathen and Honeysuckle storyline.
Oh.
Yeah, and then it just didn't work for them. And so I scrapped it, completely threw it away, started from scratch, ended up with what the soulmate theory is now. And then after I published the Soulmate Theory, I was like, I think I could go back to that storyline and try to do that again. And then that's how Heathen and Honeysuckle was born.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What a villain origin story. Like I feel like everyone I talked to lately, their villain origin story is therapy. Like in some
Real.
capacity. Like
Yeah.
of like in yeah. What radicalized you? Talking to a professional. For sure. Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna be jumping around kind of your entire backlist because I have forced this book club to be very involved in your backlist as of late. So they should know where we're like they should know our locations. Talked about scrapping a story. You've mentioned in the past starting over on Wicked and Wildflower, book two in Pacific Shores. Can you speak on, as an author, like what it was like to make the decision to start over on a story that was pretty well hashed and just like what that was like for you?
So with Wicked and Wildflower, I I had originally wanted it to be a lot more suspenseful. I really wanted to dive into like the romantic suspense, and I think that someday I still would. But as I began writing it, I just realized that I didn't think that I was like there as a writer, and I didn't think it was fitting with the characters or the dynamic of the small town and like the worlds that they were in. And so the original draft of Wicked and Wildflower, um, and this will really only pertain to like people who have read it, but in the original draft, Lou's dad actually moves to town and he is like involved or trying to be involved. So in the chapter where like her dad shows up and has that confrontation with Everett at the beginning of the book, that was supposed to be her ex. He was supposed to be the one leaving notes on her car. He was supposed to be present at Lou's birthday party, like different events throughout the book. And then he was actually supposed to kidnap her and like try to take her back to Kansas. And yeah, so it was supposed to be a little bit more like high, like action packed kind of thing. And I got to about 60,000 words. I got past like the birthday party chapter. And I just was realizing that like the justification for him like moving to California was not adding up. Like I didn't think that just saying like, oh, her dad was paying him to be there was enough. Um, it was like that, like you can't have someone abandoning their kid and then moving across the country for the same kid and like all of these things just for like it just wasn't adding up. It wasn't making sense. And I felt like I was doing too much with not enough justification for it. And so I kind of had to pivot and I needed to put more of the focus on their dad because I felt like he had the more of the motive to be like acting insane. I didn't think her ex had the same motive, and so that's why he's actually in it so little because I lowered his presence because I felt like I could justify that. I could justify him coming to California one time for a quick weekend. I can't justify him moving there and living like this book takes place over 10 months. I couldn't justify that. And and then the suspense aspect of it was just not coming together as well. So I kind of just removed him from the picture and then kind of took out some more of the suspenseful elements because I wanted to focus more on the small town and the romance. That was like what they were giving me. And I wanted to focus on that with them. And so that's kind of why I decided to. So I started over, but obviously certain plot points, like I knew they were going to have their one night stand. I knew that there were going to be like these events that were going to happen throughout the book that didn't necessarily completely change, but I had to like rewrite them because the outside elements and the subplots were what was changing.
Absolutely. And I feel like as a reader, I didn't obviously read the first one, but I would assume that created a lot of room for you to create their characters more. Because I feel like their personal experiences were so relatable to so many people. Do
Hmm.
you feel that way?
Yeah, I think that I think what I was trying to realize too is that or what I was trying to learn with them is like Dahlia, especially with her trauma, she of course has relationship trauma, and that is addressed in the book, and you do see how it affects her. But I do think that her childhood trauma and their family dynamics were much more impactful to her as a person. And by changing kind of the villain of the story and putting more of that focus on the family dynamic allowed me to explore that more deeply, which I think ultimately led to a more healing um healing ending for her. Like it was one of those things where it's like it felt like I was almost trying to give her too much trauma. And I know that you absolutely can have books where characters have like a lot of trauma, but I feel like when you're writing a character driven story and the focus is really their healing, sometimes you have to like put that hyper focus on one aspect of their life experience, like fewer aspects of their life experience so that you have time to really unpack them. And so with Dahlia, I felt like her childhood trauma was what needed to be unpacked, and so changing the dynamic of that plot line allowed me to focus on that more. And I mean, still addressing her relationship trauma and like all of that she went through with like her baby daddy, but I was able to put more of that focus on her childhood.
I loved every single moment of that. And really for just Pacific Shores in general and Darby and Dahlia, like as someone who comes from a religious background, it was such a healing read. So I am very grateful to you for that adjustment. Little did you know. um,
Yeah.
yeah, which I mean, I just loved it. Okay, and then Everett foiled her so beautifully and provided her a safe space. And I mean, Everett's my everything, and you know this. He's my top MMC of all time. What I do love about him most is his duality. I'm on record as saying this, where he's very gentle, but he's very strong. Like, he's not
Hmm.
a soft man by any means, but he has the capacity to be gentle. What was it like creating that space for Dahlia in Everett? Because she was a flawed, hard character. He was such a beautiful other half to her.
Hmm. I think I think I got kind of I didn't intentionally set it up this way, so I think I kind of like I'm very happy that I made this like I didn't make this decision, but I'm happy that it ended up this way. When I wrote Heathen and Honeysuckle, when I started writing Heathen and Honeysuckle, I didn't plan for it to be a series, but I knew very early on that Elena and August were going to get a book.
Yes.
I did not have plans for Dahlia or Everett. None. And then my beta readers read like the first chapter of Heathen and Honeysuckle and said, okay, I want the sister story. Like, what's going on with her sister?
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized very early on that people wanted Dahlia. People might want Dahlia to have a story. Everett still was not at the forefront of my mind. Like, I can't lie.
Sure.
Like, writing, because he's in it. And Heathen and Honeysuckle is so unique in that, like, you're only meeting these characters, with the exception of Dahlia very briefly. You're really only seeing these characters in the past timeline. You're like
Mm-hmm.
the present timeline, a big bulk of the book, it's literally just Darby and Leo. You're not really
Mm-hmm.
interacting with anybody else. And so when I was writing a 17-year-old Everett, he just was not developing in the same way for me. And I didn't really think about giving him a book. And then as my beta readers kept reading Heathen and Honeysuckle, and as Darby kept talking about her sister, and then as they found out that Dahlia was pregnant, they kept saying, like, you have to give Dahlia a book. And so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, great. And then when it came to when I decided, like, okay, Dahlia is going to get a book, I mean, Everett was just there. Like, it just made sense. I was like, I'm not going to, like, make a new man. I have this one.
Yeah.
Um, but he was so underdeveloped that I had so much space to
Mm-hmm.
develop him. So when I sat down to write Wicked and Wildflower, I didn't have that many character traits about Everett, other than the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he was like funny and playful and that he was bisexual. That was all I knew. That's all you
Love.
see of him, like in the past timeline, right? He's like there for a good time. Um, and so I was able to give him so much depth. And I think that I partially really played off of Leo, and the fact that Leo was kind of raised by the Ramos family. Even though Everett and Elena's parents aren't really on page in Heathen and Honeysuckle, I had a very good idea of the kind of parents that they were because of how Leo ended up. Like, I had a very clear
Mm-hmm.
vision of how Leo was raised by this family, and so I kind of knew what their mom was going to look like. And I think from there I was able to kind of play off her, and I was like, I knew the kind of men that she was going to be raising. And so
Mm-hmm.
developing Everett from that made it a little bit easier. And obviously he's very different than his brother, but I think like the conviction is between them is very similar and the way that they're very like honest
Mm-hmm.
about how they feel. They don't have a toxically masculine bone in either of their bodies. And
Mm-mm.
I really think that's like their parents doing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I knew I had a lot of room to play with that, and I was really able to craft Everett to be what Dahlia was going to need. But because of the family dynamics that I knew I had created, it also flowed so naturally. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like I was like, okay, I need him to have XYZ to combat Dahlia's XYZ. I felt like it just existed already, and they just
Yeah.
happened to be like they're probably the two most compatible characters I've ever written, which made their dynamic really easy. And I think a lot of that just came because I had so much space to work with Everett,
Mm-hmm.
and because the backstory of like his whole life was so developed, even if not necessarily on page, in my head, it was so developed, their family was so developed that I knew what he was going to be like as an adult.
Sure. Ugh, I love that, man. And I just found out right now, breaking news. It's Ramos, not Ramos. And I've been saying that for how long?
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, it's,
Breaking news.
yeah, whatever. I think people say it like different ways, but
Yeah.
my sensitivity reader, my really good friend Amber, who kind of sensitivity reads for those characters and for the Spanish and stuff, she says Ramos, I think. So I go
Beautiful.
with what she says.
No, and I will too. We will adjust immediately. I love learning new things, so that's incredible. Okay, so Wicked and Wildflower. Let's jump back to Heathen and Honeysuckle. You're on record saying that's your soul book. Now we know that the story you've kind of had on your heart and your mind for quite a while, with that kind of being similar to the first story you ever wrote. What do you mean when you say that is your soul book? Why does it mean so much to you?
Um,
Big
so
question.
I think really what it is I mean I published the Soulmate Theory almost 2 years ago, and I mean that book means a lot to me. It got me through some shit. Um and I'm very proud of it, but I think like what it taught me and what the fate philosophy taught me is there is a difference between being an author and being a writer. Like a writer is like what you are, it's your identity, it's your soul, it's your compulsion. You have to write to just like get through life. Being an author is a business, it's a brand, it's something that you sell. Um and I think that the soulmate theory and the fate philosophy made me a writer. They did not make me an author. I mean, they did. I published them. So they made me an author, but I really learned kind of the hard way through those two books is that you can be a writer, and you can be an author, but being an author is just a whole different kind of beast, and it's very financially and like emotionally draining, kind of in a way that writing is obviously not. And so I published both those books, and I'm very proud of them, and they mean a lot to me. But they don't sell much, which is okay. And like at this point, I mean, I don't really heavily market them anymore. Um, and a lot of authors, I think, feel this way about their backlist or their debut. You know, it takes time to like build your brand, but in the months after publishing the Fate Philosophy, I was like, I mean, publishing was like putting me into debt. Like it was costing me far more to publish a book than I was ever making off of them. And so I had kind of gotten to a point where I kind of sat down with my husband, and we just realized that like the publishing aspect of the journey may not be viable. And I'll never stop being a writer, but I can't keep putting myself into debt just to publish. So I started doing things like designing my own covers and doing my own formatting and all of that kind of stuff, which like helped, but still, you know, it's very like going to signings and doing all of that stuff is really expensive. And so we kind of had this talk, and I knew that that's the direction I was heading in when I started writing Heathen and Honeysuckle. And so I started writing Heathen and Honeysuckle, and I wasn't 100% sure if it would ever get published someday. I just knew it was something I was really compelled to write. But when I finished it, I just like felt, I was like, this is like magic to me. Like, it was like I wrote that and I had this just like epiphany where I was like, I really think that this book is meant to exist beyond like myself. And I love my first two books so much. And I know that you really love the Fate Philosophy. I say this sometimes and people get like offended. My husband gets offended because you know how much he loves the Fate Philosophy. But it wasn't the same feeling. Like I just wrote Heathen and Honeysuckle and I was like, this is meant to be read by people. Like it just felt so different. And I was like, I have to publish this. Like I have to. And it was kind of like, I don't want to say it was like my last ditch effort, like I was going to give up or whatever. I knew I was always going to be a writer, but I kind of was like, I'm going to publish Heathen and Honeysuckle. I'm going to put myself in debt again. And I'm going to do as much as I possibly can. I am going to like pay for marketing and pay for arcs, and I'm going to do what I have to. Like I am going to try my absolute hardest to make this be like a like to do something with this because I really think it's special. But I was fully prepared that if Heathen and Honeysuckle ended up costing me more to publish again, I probably wasn't going to publish anymore. I would keep writing. That's who I was. I might even like I was like even considering like posting on like like just having like a website or just having a newsletter and posting stuff for free or whatever. But I was like I don't think maybe I'm meant to be an author. Maybe I was born to be a writer. I don't know that I'm born to be an author. And so I was like fully prepared. And obviously like so releasing Heathen and Honeysuckle was just it was like almost like me saying like, you know, I did my best and I tried this venture and it's not what I was meant to do. So this is like my goodbye to it. That's almost how like Heathen and Honeysuckle felt to me before I published it. And like deep down I had so much hope, but I was just like trying to mentally prepare myself. And it was really just the idea that like that book felt so magical to me and I felt like it was just really meant to be more that pushed me to publish it because like I was ready to no longer publish when that book popped into my head and when I was writing it. And so putting it out there and then having it do what it's done has been like literally life altering. So it's just everything.
No, and hearing that story and then having read the book itself, it's like, yeah, you did pour your entire soul into that. Like
Yeah.
that is evident in a way that I mean, I've told you, you write the human experience in words on paper. That is like, and that is what that was. Like everything you had. So, that's kind of making me emotional actually. No one's surprised.
No, like same. Yeah, no, I like cry if I think about it too hard.
The only people that don't make it are the people that stop and stop believing in themselves, like to a certain extent. I mean, there's like, resources, but in every way that you can, I encourage people. Like an object in motion stays in motion, and the only way you lose is by quitting. Um, so now, money, support system.
I have trouble like almost telling that story because I hate the idea of like telling people like, yeah, I almost gave up. And like I used to make jokes. I was like, if this doesn't do what it needs to do, like, and I hate saying that. And that's why I try to like emphasize like I would never stop writing, but it is true that sometimes or like I've known authors that have gone away from publishing for like periods of time because financially it's such a burden if you're not making money off it and then I've come back years later. Like I didn't know if I didn't know what direction I was going, I think is like the biggest thing. I just knew that I wanted Heathen and Honeysuckle to exist beyond myself. And I had to like really, really hope with it that it was going to have the ability to do that.
I just love it. I do. I love it so much. And what a testament to like, if something's meant for you, it'll find you.
Hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's why Heathen and Honeysuckle is so like well, I think my we know that my brand is obviously I love to talk like I love things that are like written in the stars. I want every single person to read every single book I write and be like, "Yep, those two people are soulmates, no questions." But I think Heathen and Honeysuckle maybe goes a little bit of like a bit deeper. They're almost a bit much with they're like I don't even know how to describe them. But what my friend Lexi said something to me the other day that they're aggressively romantic. That's how she was like she said something about Leo and she was like this man is writing sonnets at the age of 17. And I was like, "Yep, that is the right way to describe him actually."
And that's correct.
But I think I think I was so writing that book, I was really hyper focused on the themes of like what's meant to be will be, and even if you lose something for a period of time, sometimes that's just to teach you a lesson and it's going to come full circle. And obviously I was doing that through the guise of like a romance or like a love story, but I do think that part of the reason why I'm so hyper focused on those themes, especially in Heathen and Honeysuckle, is because I was so hopeful while writing it that that is what I was meant to do, and this is what I was meant to do.
And it's evident. It glows through that story. Like, truly, truly. So, Heathen and Honeysuckle, second chance dual timeline. One of my faves, you know? I love it. What has it been like to return to the past in a sense, preparing for the release of Reckless Roses?
Um, Reckless Roses was so okay. I don't want to say it was so fun to write. It, but I was so when I started. Okay, we know that Wicked and Wildflower kind of burnt me out. Like writing Wicked and Wildflower was very difficult. I had to start over. Wicked and Wildflower, all in all, and it was the only project that I was working on. Took me from January of 2024 to June of 2024 to write. That is a long time. I write most of my books in 90 days. So it was like double the amount of time. It took a long time for me to write Wicked and Wildflower. So when I got to start on Reckless Roses, I was actively excited to no longer be writing Wicked and Wildflower. Like as bad as that sounds, I love it so much, but I was like, get out of my face. Um I was so it was really fun to like go back in time. I have to say he does it's not like this gets like a super hyper focus or anything like that, but I had the time of my life writing little glimpses of like a really sad heartbroken Leo Graham in between his Darby years. Like you get the little glimpses of him and he is like sad boy energy, and that was really fun. I had so much fun rewriting. There are two chapters from Heathen and Honeysuckle that are rewritten in Reckless Roses, one from August's point of view and the other from Elena's.
Fun.
And that was so fun. I got to like open Heathen and Honeysuckle back up and like reread those chapters and then rewrite them. And you get to see all of, and there's these little things that like you probably don't even notice when you're reading Heathen and Honeysuckle. Like there's this one scene where you see August and Darby says he looks pissed off and he like slams the door and leaves. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it's one sentence and it's going to go over your head. But then all of a sudden you're reading Reckless Roses and you're seeing that whole night play out from his point of view. And you're like, oh my God, he was pissed off. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're seeing all these things happen and just like what they're doing at that same time. Um, and I think that was just really it was really fun to go back and get to see them as teenagers again.
Mm-hmm.
I have like a whole special playlist of only music that was like out in 2014 because that summer like chronologically takes place in 2014. So if you like in Heathen and Honeysuckle because they do reference music multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
in the past timeline, it is only songs that came out in 2014 or before. I like was
So good.
doing my research to make sure. When they reference like Summer by Calvin Harris, that
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be Roses by the Chainsmokers, but that song came out in 2016 and I had to change it. So I felt like Summer fit the same vibe, so I
It
swapped those
does.
songs out. Yeah, so like little things like that.
Yeah.
Um Baby I'm Yours was supposed to be the song called Honeysuckle by Fulton Lee, but that song
I
came out in
know
like
that song.
2021 or 2022. So I was like, shit, that won't work. And then I found Baby I'm Yours and I was like, oh, hell yeah. So, like, certain
Yeah.
things like that, I had to like do the research and I got to do the same thing with Reckless Roses. Only a couple times does music get referenced. Like, it's like when they're at a
Sure.
house party and a song is playing or whatever. But I was
Yeah.
like doing, and I had that playlist on again and it was really fun. And then they kind of age out of those teenage years. Like, you see in Reckless Roses, it goes all the way up until they are 24, I think.
And I'm afraid.
Yeah, you should be. But there's really fun, like, people will find out there was like a period of time that like Elena and Leo lived together as adults. And like just different things like that. Like August moved to San Diego for a period of time. And like people get to find that out. I don't know, just like little things like that that I think are really fun, especially for people who read Heathen and Honeysuckle and are like, what was going on in those 10 years? Like you get a little glimpses to it, at least from the Pacific Shores, like that family's end.
I'm so I'm so excited. Like I couldn't be more excited and like therapy's booked. I'm ready to probably lock myself in a room and cry. Probably.
I mean, I will say, so I mean, Reckless Roses obviously did me in. It absolutely made me cry. But it's not even comparable to Vice and Violet, which is so weird because I was thinking that Reckless Roses was going to be like the shocking one, the cliffhanger, the like, but Reckless Roses is like this very slow burning kind of pain that you're just not sure if it's ever going to go away kind of kind of
Grief.
feeling. Yeah. And Reckless Roses is like, or Vice and Violet, I don't even like opening that document because it stresses me out real bad.
I'm so afraid.
That's probably like the worst kind of marketing. Like, hey, I'm afraid to open this book, but you guys should read it. But that's how I feel at least. But also, I've had to read through it like 4 times now, and I had to write it. So it's a little bit traumatizing every time I see that document in my drive. I'm like, mm-mm, I'm not opening you.
So what you are saying though is now is the time for a Heathen and Honeysuckle reread so that we don't miss some of these moments.
Yeah, like if yeah, read it again and like pay a little bit more attention to the past timeline and the group dynamics. And I mean, there's hints are being dropped from Heathen and Honeysuckle for sure about just a lot of, I think the hints are pretty clear. Like I think most people know by the time they finish Heathen and Honeysuckle. I mean, obviously certain things are revealed. But I think even the dynamic of like the love triangle, I think is very like clear as well. But there's definitely more specific hints if you like read between the lines.
Have you enjoyed getting to mastermind that and do the little crossovers? Do they come naturally to you? Are you looking to tie those in? What has that process been like?
Yeah, I'm a very like one thing that my husband will tell you, he thinks it's so annoying, but I have the worst habit of like if we're watching a movie, I can't move past a plot hole. I don't care how bad it is, like or how small it is. I'll be watching and I'll be like, okay, her hair was in a ponytail, and then the camera cut, and when it cut back to her, it's down, and I'll be like, ew. I I hate that. Yeah. So, as a writer, I'm very big on like bringing things full circle, even if they're like minuscule details. And I really don't like a plot hole. They like drive me up a wall a little bit. So, and even if it's not necessarily a plot hole, but it's like if I mention someone wearing a necklace in chapter 2, that necklace needs to come full circle by the end of the book. Like, otherwise, why am I talking about it? You know what I mean? And so I do actually get enjoyment in that. It can be a little bit overwhelming at times, but especially when you're working with multiple timelines and big groups of people, like a big extended family, found family. But I do get a lot, like I have a lot of fun with it. I love bringing things full circle, even if nobody else is going to notice it except for me. I love having little moments where things are like kind of referenced in a really fun way. Um and yeah, so those are always like, I actually get a lot of enjoyment out of those.
Is there something that you're like, please notice, and either nobody's noticed or not enough people notice, or something that readers should pay attention to going into this release cycle?
Um, okay. Yeah. When you read Vice and Violet towards the end, oh gosh, I can't even really like explain it without giving too much away. But when you get to the end of Vice and Violet, there are some big family moments that happen with the whole family, particularly with the side characters, kind of an expansion of family, if you will. And that is something readers should pay incredibly close attention to. There is also a crossover chapter with all of the Pacific, every main character I have ever written is in the same room at the same time. And there is a moment between Darby and Macy that readers should absolutely pay attention to.
Oh, I'm in. Prepare for my live reading updates to come. I am so excited just for everything. This is so exciting. You've mentioned your husband a bit, and I talk about my husband a lot and what his support has meant to me as a creator. And I'm assuming here, what is it like having a support system like him? I'm assuming, but what is that partnership like as an author?
Oh yeah, no. I wouldn't be doing any of this without my husband. I remember like when I was going to therapy and I first started kind of writing and I had been like writing these random little chapters about Penelope, but like just random things. I remember when I was like, you know what, I think I want to write a romance book. I like sat down with my husband and was like, I think I want to try to write a romance book and I don't know if I have time or like I don't really know how it works. And this man, like, literally just filled up my water bottle and, like, sat me down at my computer and gave me headphones and was like, no, you need to do this. Yes. And he's like so insanely supportive, like, in a way that I can't even, there are not words to, like, describe. Like, when I made the decision to self-publish, he did so much research. Like he was the one that figured out what like Ingram Spark was and how to do so many things. He handles a lot of my finances. He does like our taxes and stuff. I mean, even earlier today, I got off because I still work my day job in the mornings. And so I got off at noon and I had meetings from like 11 to 12 and then I got off at 12 and I said, okay, I have 2 hours until I record this podcast and I needed to write in that 2 hours. And so he like just went and made me like a sandwich and like brought it to me in my office. He just refills my water bottle without saying anything. If I am on like a deadline and because for us, quality time is definitely our love language with each other. That's really, really important to the both of us. But when I'm on deadline, it's unfortunately just not always an option. And I have like really, I'll feel really guilty if I can't spend that time together and he is constantly reassuring me that like it's okay and he understands and I mean he reads all of my books. He's like I think 40 or 50% through Vice and Violet right now and he gives me all his little updates every time he's reading. I mean, as you know, he has a favorite book, he has favorite characters. He doesn't have social media, so about once a week or so, he'll take my phone and go on my Instagram and go through all of my tagged posts because he loves to see what readers are saying. He knows I don't check Goodreads, so he'll go on my Goodreads and screenshot nice reviews and send them to me when I'm like feeling down or feeling insecure about my writing. He goes to all my signings with me and he like is very interactive with readers and he'll be like, "Well, this is my favorite book and these are my favorite characters." And he recommends my books to everybody that he works with. Like, and it extends like to his family. My in-laws are incredibly supportive. My mother-in-law is like always talking me up to people. And just, yeah. And I know I talk to a lot of authors who don't have that same support, like especially spicy romance. They don't get the same level of support from like in-laws and stuff like that. Or sometimes from their husbands, you know. So I'm incredibly lucky for like a million different reasons to be married to this man, but his support of all of this has like only increased that like tenfold.
Well, I'm very excited. Hopefully, he'll see this because it's on YouTube, and that's where I know I can find him.
Yeah,
I
he's on
I messaged
YouTube.
poor Sarah once, and I was like, "So this man, whenever I post about you, is commenting, is this your husband?" And you were like, "Yes, that is him." And he's the proud president of the Fate Philosophy fan club, and I'm the treasurer because I simply
Yeah,
cannot be the president.
he is. Although he told me that like as of right now, like he thinks that Vice and Violet might end up winning out, which is really crazy. I couldn't have imagined that anything could beat the fate philosophy for him, but
We will have to have a meeting of our club to discuss such a decision. Oh my gosh, that is so exciting. Yeah, having somebody support you in that way is it's impossible to do work. Like we're doing different work, but it truly is. I could not do this without him. He's sending me articles. He's sending me lead ideas. He's like all kinds of things. He got TikTok so he could follow me. Like it's just like that kind of support goes so it's morale at the end of the day because when you're at empty, having someone show up like that is just unimaginable.
yeah, and just like supporting your like physical needs too. Like I work from home all of the time, whether it's my day job or whether it's as an author, I do work from home full time. And so I feel this like very intense need to like keep the house clean and stay on top of chores, but like some days it absolutely doesn't happen. And he works like 10-hour shifts. And he works very, very long days and his job is physical. And so he'll come home and he'll still like do the freaking dishes or make dinner. I can't cook. I absolutely can't cook. This man makes all of my meals. And just that goes like so far and he knows that the guilt eats at me so bad. Like I'll feel so bad if I can't, you know, I guess like I have a really hard time with work-life balance, as I'm sure you understand. Um, and it makes me feel guilty because I feel like it affects him.
Yes,
And he never lets me he never lets me sit in that guilt, which is invaluable.
it is. Yeah, it is unimaginable. He's at the grocery store right now because I was like, I'm not gonna have time this week. Like this week is, I'm at max. Like, and he's like, okay, what can I take off your plate? Like, yeah, couldn't do it without them. And I always tell people either don't settle for anything less than that. You can do it by
Hmm.
yourself, or you can have someone who supports you. But like, it is so worth. There are guys and girls like that out there and are worth waiting for, I
Hmm.
think.
Absolutely.
We spoke about you in the beginning and kind of your process. If you could grab coffee with her or even yourself a year ago, give yourself a piece of advice, reassurance, something of the sort, what do you wish you could tell yourself?
I think I would just tell myself a year ago or 2 years ago or even 5 years ago to that like my intuition does not lie. When my intuition told her that she should move across the country for literally no reason, that was going to lead to far better things. And when my intuition told me to start writing books, like I did it, and when my intuition told me to write and publish Heathen and Honeysuckle, even though I didn't know if I should keep publishing, listen, when my intuition, a lot of people don't know this. Well, nobody knows this, I don't think. But last summer, I actually got an offer for the Pacific Shores series from another publishing house. And I ended up not going with it because I was dead set on Page and Vine. I wanted to be published through Page and Vine specifically. And so I turned down that opportunity, and Page and Vine didn't even have submissions open. I had not even pitched to them. I just knew I was like, I want Page and Vine. And so I turned it down, and 3 months later they opened their submissions, and 3 months after that I had an offer. So um
I have
I think
chills.
I would just tell
Chills.
myself, keep listening to my intuition. Like my
Yep.
intuition seems to know. So that's
Yes.
what I lead on nowadays.
Kind of circles back to a little known, maybe not little known, but little known for me, my one of my favorite books of all time, The Alchemist. I don't know if this is relevant or not. Can you speak to any themes of The Alchemist that have affected your writing or
Oh, absolutely. The Alchemist is the reason I like, yeah. No, The Alchemist is my favorite book of all time.
it's required reading for book club?
Yeah, I literally say every single person that breathes air should read this book in their life. I I had so I told you at the beginning of the episode I had written like a draft of the soulmate theory, but it wasn't called that. And then I scrapped it, right? I had written that and I was like not feeling good about it. And then I read The Alchemist. I read The Alchemist in high school. It was a required reading for me in 11th grade. But listen, it should not be a high school required reading, in my opinion, because 16-year-olds are not mature enough to understand the themes of that. Also, the way that it was taught in my school's curriculum was very literal. And that's not a literal book, and you shouldn't be looking at it through a literal lens. It's not going to give you what you need from it. But I picked it up again when I was 23 or 24. Um, and I read it, and that was like that was what made me decide I was going to self-publish. I wasn't going to write for no reason. And I just think, I mean, The Alchemist just changed my life. I read it once a year. I have the same copy I've had since high school that I have annotated probably 7 or 8 times. And every single time I read back through it, I have notes scribbled in the margins from literally when I was 16, and again when I was 24, and again when I was 25 and 26, and where I add new things and new thoughts and new ways that it like opens up my eyes. And actually, the 25th anniversary edition of The Alchemist has a foreword from Paulo Coelho in it. And that I had never read because I had the OG version from when I was in high school. And I bought the 25th anniversary edition for a friend to annotate for her. And when I read that author's note where it literally talks about how he wrote The Alchemist and he sold it to a publisher and they had it in like one bookstore in Brazil and like one person bought it and he was like, this isn't a thing. And then the right person walked into that bookstore, bought a copy, who worked in publishing in New York City and like was like, everyone needs to read this book. And it was like years after he first published it that The Alchemist got like was on like an international market, and now it's known as one of like the best pieces of literature in like modern history. And at one point there was one copy for sale in one bookstore in Brazil, and that was it. Like, so it's just, I don't know, like that. I just remember reading that for the first time only like a year and a half ago because I never had that version of the book, and like just sobbing. Like,
Full body
because,
chills right now.
yeah, because the metaphors and the symbolism in this book can relate to any person that has a dream, no matter what that dream is. But getting to read that from the author of the book, because that author has the same dreams that I have, was like, it like stabbed me even harder. Um, but no, I mean, in my debut novel, like The Alchemist is referenced by name. It's like a significant aspect of one of my characters' lives. And it's because that book affected me so profoundly that it literally, I mean, that story's only referenced by name in that one book, but there are, I think the reason why I also feel so compelled to write these themes of like things being meant to be or being written in the stars and using um like cosmic metaphors and like metaphors of like nature and the earth and like these things, I think all of that comes from The Alchemist for me, because his ability to symbolize all of these aspects of like nature into think like and connecting us as human beings with those through metaphors, I think had a really, really big impact on me. It made me understand, I think, myself and the world and like the bigger meaning of life in a way that I wasn't able to comprehend before. And so it feels like something that's ingrained to me now. And I obviously do it through like the guise of love. I tell, love stories and I write romance, but those aspects I think really sat with me. And I think that's why I am so compelled to like write symbolism in that same kind of way, because it's how I understood like so many things.
It's stunning. And one of our first conversations was about The Alchemist because I believe I posted about it. But
Hmm.
to anyone who's a Sarah A. Bailey fan, I highly recommend reading The Alchemist. It is a quick read. Like, it's like,
I think it's like 166 pages. It's not very long.
I could not recommend A, just reading it in general, but reading it and then reading your backlist from that lens and knowing that about you, it made me want to be more curious about when you said something or what you meant by that. Because knowing that you came from a lens that was similar, especially the soulmate theory. But yes, so I highly, highly recommend. This is now required reading for book club. So congratulations, everyone! You've earned yourself a book assignment, and you can report back with your findings. We have time for one more question, and I'm just gonna give you the floor because I do have a captive audience of many, many Sarah A. Bailey fans who listen weekly, and just an open opportunity to speak to a captive audience who adore you?
Oh my gosh.
No pressure.
I know. I mean, I don't even want to like plug anything. Like, I hope that people are excited for the re-release. I'm really excited for the re-release. I have very, very high hopes for it. I am manifesting many things. I guess I'll remind everyone that if you've seen those sprayed edges on the internet at all, those are limited. They're first print run only. So I strongly recommend getting your hands on them. Um, and I hope everyone's excited for Vice and Violet and Reckless Roses. Um, I'm really excited for them. They're very different than I think what you've seen from me before, whether that's the Pacific Shores books or my backlog. They're extremely different. They have a big, like, if they were in a box, they would have a really big, like, fragile sign on them. Handle with care is how I feel about August and Elena, but I hope that everybody will love them. I hope everybody will give them grace. Sometimes in the book community, we don't give that to complicated women, and Elena is the definition of a complicated woman. So, I hope that everybody like loves her as much as I do. Um, and I was gonna say something else, but I can't remember it now. I guess, I mean, more than anything else, I wouldn't be like in this position, having this conversation, having a trad re-release, having sprayed edges. I wouldn't be having any of this if people hadn't like just given Heathen and Honeysuckle a chance and talked about it and recommended it. So I'm just incredibly grateful to every single person that's ever picked up any of my books and read them and given them the time of day and recommended them to someone else. And I'll never stop being like truly like flabbergasted and at a loss of words of the way that people are able to connect with my writing because I truly didn't think that I had the ability to s- speak to things or to write things that people could resonate with. And it's been like the honor of my whole life to find out that I am able to do that and that people are able to connect that way. So I'm just really grateful for that.
Well, it is an honor to read and be a part of and support, truly. So thank you for the opportunity to support you and for taking the time. I know I'm tagging you all the time and all the things. So thank you for your patience as I just adore you, as you know. So I feel very
No, I
grateful.
love it.
And then now we'll even have more to tag about coming here by the end of the year. I mean, two more books, which is so exciting. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to chat. And maybe we'll have to reconnect before these next releases. Have a second round of book club to chat even further.
Yeah,
But exciting.
absolutely. Anytime.
Okay. Well, we will chat soon, I'm sure. But thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.